Grace means recognizing that we are not in control of the whole story. We can act with integrity, we can stand in vision, but ultimately leadership is about listening to life, to emergence, and allowing it to guide us. Grace also gives us the humility to let go, the courage to act from love, and the trust that something larger is at work through us. So if we could design a world including the grace for Mother Earth, motherhood, and humanity in general, I think we can design an entire different world that can be beautiful, abundant, and more just.
Hi, I'm Alex, and this is Voices of Emergence. Today, the roles gently shift. In this episode, I'm in conversation with my co-host and partner in this journey, Rudy de Waele. Rudy is an emergence leadership guide, facilitator, and elder in becoming, whose work bridges inner transformation, systemic regeneration, and collective and field intelligence. Active long before the internet and mobile technologies reshaped our world, he has spent decades working at the intersection of art, technology, culture, innovation, and human development. Over time, his path shifted from accelerating systems to questioning the underlying belief systems, assumptions, addictions, and unresolved traumas. Through men's work, somatic practice, Vipassana meditation, and deep inquiry into masculinity, leadership, and regeneration, Rudy now focuses on creating spaces where individuals and collectives can build capacity, coherence, responsibility, and life-affirming action. Rudy is the co-founder and co-host of Voices of Emergence, a podcast that has grown into an evolving community and learning platform exploring regeneration, consciousness, leadership, and the cultural transitions of our time. This conversation is an invitation to slow down and look beneath the surface at the experiences that shaped Rudy's path, the inner work that continues to orient his decisions, and what it means to steward a field rather than lead from the front. At its core, Rudy's work is grounded in a simple orientation, acting from love rather than fear, in service of humanity and the living world. And Rudy, it's such a pleasure to be in conversation with you. As always, let's start with the first question. What does emergence or the word emergence mean to you?
Thank you, Alex, for this lovely introduction. And it's good to be on the other side of the seat. So, what is emergence? We had so many people already in our podcast talking about that, and I think they all pretty much are close to that. But for me, I think emergence is really that space where when we are connected to our natural field intelligence, and that space allows for new things to emerge. So it's basically, I think, when we are connected to the natural world, the world around us, but also from, within ourselves. And it's something that is emergent, is not something you can plan for. It's not like it cannot be designed in the traditional sense, it's something that arises when all the conditions are right. When there's enough safety, when there's presence, when there's honesty or truth, and relational intelligence also for something new to appear. So I've seen this happening in technology, in communities, in man's work, and inner practice. And whenever we push too hard, is basically then we activate the repetitions of the past. We activate the conditioning of the past. And so when we slow down, when we listen and stay with the uncomfortable, the not knowing, I think something genuinely new can emerge. And I think that is emergence. It's something that is deeply connected also with, I think, responsibility. Yeah. It asks us to stop projecting solutions onto the world and instead asks us, what capacity is being asked from me now? What capacity can I hold So in the world that we are now, in the world of polarities and all that. So in that sense, emergence is less about creating the future and more about becoming available to it. And so it's a relational process, something that happens between people, between inner and outer worlds, and between humanity and the living systems we belong to. So, and yeah, I think Voices of Emergence also exist to hold space for that process, to slow conversations down so we can get a sense what wants to come next, what wants to emerge, rather than repeating what we already know. And then also raising the question of how can we create conditions for real natural emergence to happen between us, nature, our planet, and the world around us.
Yes, I agree. But you were not always in this. If we step back, and back when we met each other, Rudy, we both had different kinds of careers. So if I can take you back, what drew you originally to the internet and to the mobile movements, and what did you learn from that?
Um, well, I think if I go really early back to my teenage years, I had always thirst for discovery, adventure, the new, like innovation. I remember reading, the Odyssey from Ulysses, yeah, Homerus, and that really activated a whole inner world of like the potential of what we can do with our lives. And then I always my world was a lot because there wasn't a lot of connection with my parents. I had a very happy home, let's say. My father worked, my mother worked. We had always food from the garden. My dad was one of the first biological, vegetable gardeners, and so we always had great and healthy food. And but there was no connection. There was no real communication. So I quickly I think, developed my own inner world. Even in school, already very early on, even in primary school, they told me he's always dreaming outside the window. They told my mom. So, and so I think for me, that world was very much into music. Yeah. And I remember I was very early on into jazz music. I listened to a lot of jazz. I read all the bios, of Charlie Parker, Coltrane, Charles Mingus, Thelonious Monk, Miles Davis, and I kind of felt, I think, a sense of belonging to those type of people, and even that was mostly a black culture, or let's say Afro-American culture. They were people who were operating from the edges. They were not accepted as fully humans, in their world, but they were able to create amazing art, and amazing new things. And I think that stayed with me for the rest of my life, like always, going for the new, for rhythm, new interactions. All these jazz musicians, they never played with the same band. They always changed, their band or the settings. And so I think that stayed with me for the rest of my life. Afterwards, I went for travels to India. I played saxophone, was a musician, and then I did a lot of events. Actually, the first dent I put, myself was my own events that I started doing in my 20s, where I brought also artists together, video artists, DJs, videographers, fashion designers, dancers. It was like multimedia spectacle. We called it at that time, while the world that word didn't even exist. But and then I did a lot of these events. I didn't do many, but every time I did it in a different place. Every month I looked for a different industrial space or whatever space I could find. I did one in the central station in Brussels for 3,000 people. And they were always very different events where a lot of mix happened. And then after that, I actually stopped because my first wife was pregnant then from my triplet daughters at the time. And then I decided not to go further in the nightlife. So there was a period of transition also which was not easy because I did two jobs. I did a day job in telemarketing. I did a night job in a five-star hotel as a bartender. And then in that period, I discovered the internet, and then That I remember I saw a documentary of Wired magazine at that time, 94 or something. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. So that's how I got into technology. I got a computer, an internet connection, and then I linked basically my background of always, doing arts, culture, events, also with the internet. One of the first events I did was playing a CD-ROM of Brian Eno, with 3D glasses and with the music of Brian Eno. That was kind of an event in the Arts Festival in Brussels at the time. And that was my first multimedia event. And then later came the internet and a lot of other things. So I don't know how deep you want to go in there. I think just shortly, I started on the internet as an internet entrepreneur in Belgium. Then they called me in to start a cyber theater, which was an old movie theater. We renovated in, 3D virtual reality room. We did business events in the day. There was a bar, restaurant. We did cultural events and music events in the evening. We had Simple Minds there and other music bands doing their first live concert on the internet sometimes. And from there, I went to Brussels 2000, which was the cultural, Brussels was the cultural capital of Europe then, with 9 other cities, or there were 9 cities in the year 2000. And I did all the coordination between artists and sponsors and technology and all that. And from there, they called me in from in Finland, Mindworks, to start developing the first scenarios for the smartphones. That was in the year 2000. The smartphone was not even there. They were in the labs. And so that gave me a huge advantage also of like what was to come, because we were developing all the scenarios of what would be possible with mobile. And from there on, I think 2001, the internet crashed. Lots of people went back to their old, jobs. And two of the guys in Finland had moved to Spain, and they developed a software called TV Chat, where you could basically send SMS to TV. And they asked me, like, Rudy, what you're doing? Come to Spain. It's a huge opportunity here. Spain was one of the first countries that had 3G technology. And then, yeah, I went there to a couple of times to Madrid, Barcelona to negotiate with the operators. And a couple of months later, we were on TV. And that was a huge smash hit, because we got half of the 90 cents money that are, to be shared with operators. We got for our share, and that was good business, even on local channels at the time. And then from there on, we did many campaigns in Spain, with newspapers, radios, TV channels. And then I started blogging on mobile. And from the blogging, they started asking me as a speaker, can you talk about what you're blogging about? And that's how I got into speaking. And I ended up in Singularity University. And there actually was I think just before that, I did a lot of events. That's also how we got to know each other with Mobile Monday. We did Mobile 2.0 events in San Francisco, Barcelona. And yeah, we did a lot of events and brought the ecosystem together, actually. And from there, I went to Singularity University. That was in 2010, I think, or 11. And there, for the first time, I understood that technology is not going to save us. So I understood like it's all coming together, AI, robotics, genetics, health and all that. But my heart was aching, there was this tension here, but I couldn't place it yet, what was happening with me. I understood like something is missing, and it was the human side. It took me a couple of more years than when I lived in England, in Cambridge, at another insight also that I understood that everything I know, I cannot innovate any longer. And I need to start innovate myself. And that was actually the start of my transformation, which was, yeah, roughly 10 years ago, I think.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about what happened. Was there a disillusionment? Did you, in your work across cultures, industries, creative ecosystems, um, what did you understand about systems and about the belief systems beneath them? And what happened that you felt some disillusionment?
Yeah, well, I think first, I think the rational only world didn't make sense to me any longer. There was something missing. And I felt that, I sensed that. And I have always worked very intuitively. As an innovator, you sense what is coming. You see the future, what is going to happen in a couple of years. And then when you decide or you see certain sectors that are totally not connected, you see them, they're going to bridge. And so what happened with any type of technology, it just like encapsulates all type of sectors. And I could always clearly see that. And then it's easy to set a line and do that, what you need to do to go there. So very linear thinking. But I sensed also that this was not enough any longer because I realized like what is going to happen with humanity. I realized then already like the huge impact of AI and robotics on, jobs and all that. And the impact that's going to have on humanity. I think it's great that there's technology like AI and robotics to do the things that are very repetitive, that we do or my mother has done. She worked in Siemens in the factory and she the whole day she had to do this and that, which is not a very human task, reminding also Charles Chaplin in that movie. What's the name called again?
Oh,
Where
that's a
he's
good
doing the
question.
thing with the machines. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's such a funny memory also. Then already he could see that, in the 20s or 30s. And I could see that clearly also then with technology and with especially AI. And um, but then I met an old friend of mine, so Humberto Schwab, who was doing Socratic dialogue, Socratic design, actually. He wrote a book about that, which is actually to look at your belief systems, your assumptions, your addictions, your trauma, and I was in my mid 50s and I realized I had never looked at my childhood. So that was like the first, awareness exercise of like, whoa, what is happening with me here? Like I have always been working also in the new, in innovation, but then I never basically looked from within what is happening with me. I think there was also a lot of actually always looking for the new as a way of escaping myself, escaping to deal with myself or escaping a certain pain that was there that I couldn't, deal with at the time because we create all this, defensive mechanism around us, like since we are a child, and then we cannot even access that any longer because it's so far away. I had never looked back. So that was like first wake up call, also like rewriting my own story, like what actually happened to me and why this story stayed with me, when I looked at them on a deeper level. And at the same time, also, I met then my partner Janai, yeah, which one I did Regenerate X, and she also did the Socratic design. And there, actually, she invited me then to go to Turkey. So I had lived in Barcelona 10 years. I had lived in UK 5 years, and then I did a sabbatical actually in the north of Spain again, where I sat by the river in a small medieval village. And I remember sitting every morning by the river. I went on a walk and sat by the river. And that was like, I think that was my first cleansing of like just the water coming from the mountains there in the Pyrenees, and then every day just that flow of water. And the water was so pure. And it was like, yeah, really, yeah, I think a first sense of coming to myself, yeah, and connection to myself. So then I went to live in Turkey. I thought like, whoa, Turkey, like over here we had this impression with the authoritarian, Erdogan, and my friends were telling me, what are you going to do in Turkey? It's an authoritarian state. But then when I went there a couple of times, I realized, wow, there is like so much alternative culture there. And actually, that's where I discovered regenerative villages and people who really live off grid. They are totally in connection with nature. They use technology, they use wind energy, solar energy, but they create their own villages with new materials and they are entirely self-sufficient. So that was kind of a first also dive deep into regeneration before I started reading the books of Daniel Christian Wall, Laura Storm, Charles Hutchings, and all that. That came even later when I started going deeper into theory. But there was this sense of like, whatever system there is, or whatever system that we perceive through media, that is not life. There is a lot more going on in life. And that also brought me back to my own travels when I was 18, to India, to Morocco, to Europe. We had this sense of freedom. And that was amazing also, that, life is here also to be free and to be lived freely. Yeah, we can agree, on certain things to live as a society and to have agreements on how we live, how we pay taxes, and how we organize all that. But I feel also with technology, something is starting to get lost. We get this false sense of freedom that we can do and say whatever we want online, but then we are not really fully living freely any longer. And so for me, then it became more and more apparent also to really go in that direction and really live fully freely. And that was a period also that I was less online. I basically was not on social media. I just followed basic things that I needed for my speaking gigs. I was still traveling a lot as a speaker. And then with Janai, we decided to move to Ibiza, because Ibiza was for us the lab for human innovation. Why? Because, people from Silicon Valley come there, blockchain coders, regenerative people, spiritual people, people who are about health and healthy living, creative people from Europe. It's like a melting pot of everything that we need for the future is kind of being designed there. And so a lot of the things that I'm doing now was already designed there. Yeah, and was already conceptually in my mind there. That was also the period when COVID was there. I did a lot of reading and digging into regeneration, because I decided to stop as a keynote speaker, because I didn't believe any longer in the one to many model, but really more into a model of community. How can we sit in circle again? How can we, be together and really sit with what's alive, with what is emerging from a circle, instead of top-down thinking and doing and action-driven efficiency and doing and all that. And so that was the start then of Unconditional Man. And then we did a lot of man circles there physically, but also online during COVID. I thought this would not work, but it was actually that also. I think there we also reconnected. You were in one of the first things online I did there, I think. And and I realized also this can work also online. And then we started doing online programs as well, until I had this warning for my heart surgery.
Yeah, I sense that there's an undercurrent in your life which has been about creativity and jazz and improvisation, and you went to India and living in Turkey, regenerative communities, very like nourishing nature, and compared to the polarity of like systems, and you're from North Europe, it's the hegemony, it's and so there's this polarity in you. And so you mentioned your heart. What happened there? What was that like?
Well, actually, I was always doing walks. We had two dogs there, and I was always, in Ibiza, it's a bit hilly. You can go uphill. It's not that high, but every time I went uphill, I was getting out of breath, and which was kind of all of a sudden, because before that, even during COVID, I went regularly. We went running with Janine also, who's also a very fit person. So, and in Ibiza, you're close to the water, you swim very often, in the summer, even in winter, you swim, or and up to late November, and you start swimming very early on. So I was very healthy, but then, yeah, when that came up, and then it took me to the doctor, an echography, and then he said, like, yeah, something is happening with your heart. And then I went to the cardiologist, and then they told me, yeah, something is not right. We're going to call you for tests. But meanwhile, 2, 3 months had passed, and I was in Belgium for my family visit. And I went to my cardiologist here, and he did a echography, and he said, like, don't go back to Spain. You need immediate surgery. My heart, my aorta valve is usually a man is between 3.5 and 5 centimeter thick. It's where all the blood comes in your heart. And And that was actually less than 1 centimeter. It was totally, like slipped. And so that's why I had problems of breathing and all that and difficulties. And I remember we even had a retreat, and I think that was in April. We had a retreat scheduled in May, and I had to cancel my part of that. I delegated that to some friends, and Chennai hold a retreat there. But yeah, a month later, I went in surgery. I went through all the tests, and I went into heart surgery, which was really, I am so grateful, for technology and science, at the same time, because these are also things that help us, especially with these type of, when there's accidents or really, deep deep type of wounds, on your health and all that. And I was really well treated. The surgery went really well. You don't really know, they just wake you up in the evening. It happened in the afternoon. That all went well. But then the next day I had an internal bleeding. They put this corset around you too, because I was totally open, and to hold it together when you cough and all that. So it doesn't move. And probably they put it too closely or something, and something happened. When they released it, there was a bleeding that started, and all the machines went on like beep, 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 beep. And there I went out of my body like a couple of times. Every time I heard them, we're losing him, we're losing him, we're losing him. And I went, it was like, but it was not a nice feeling. It's not like you go in the tunnel, it was more like I felt all the life in me getting out of my body. I literally felt like the blood is leaving my body. My life is leaving my body. And so it happened. They were for 2 hours. They worked on me. They told me. I only remember 2, 3 times I went, came back, and I went out again. But after that experience, I really got that experience like, wow, like all the time I'm given now is extra time. And whatever I do, I have always lived, very much from my intuition, from my values, like what I see, what I want to do, and I do it. But then I really realized also, like, whatever happens, I'm just going to do that. And then, but that was in Belgium. So I decided to stay in Belgium. There was a second surgery, a couple of months. I had 3 months or 4 months of revalidation. And then they announced me, you need another surgery. So I went through another surgery, another revalidation. So I was like a year off, basically. And then I was wondering what I'm going to do. I decided to stay in Belgium also for administrative reasons. I've lived 25 years abroad, and whatever they tell you, this is Europe, it's all connected and all that. You need to take care of your administration, your papers to get your things in order. And that's what I did. And then I decided to focus on unconditional man, which was then online, which I did for a while. But then also I realized at a certain moment that that work was not fulfilling me any longer. I was like getting into a loop, of all the time the same things coming up, all the time the shame, the guilt, all these things from man, and it becomes very heavy also to carry that as a man, because we can do a lot of work for others. When you do that work, you also need someone who guides you or who can release you once in a while of that heavy weight. And but I realized also I'm like, I need to pause this, and I need to change something radically. I cannot keep doing that because I wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't happy, though I was living a very relaxed life here. Yeah. I was living in my own rhythm. I do my walks. I do my yoga in the morning. I do my breathing. I don't have too much of a social life, but that's okay. After 25 years abroad, like you lost many connections, and my two best friends, actually, they passed away already. And then a lot of my other people that I knew, they passed away already, which is also kind of a, wake up call. And so then I decided I'm going to just take a pause, a break. And I realized actually that I actually had to learn to surrender, learn to receive. I was myself too much in my masculine side. And so, which is all about doing, and I want to, show that I'm still valid and that I can do things, and I want to make money. I want to create safety for myself and all these things. And I realized that, that feminine side, which is the nutrition, for yourself, which is the inspiration, which is your creativity, which is the nurturing, which is also the love and the compassion, was lacking for myself. And as soon as I did, I think a couple of weeks later, I had this insight and also to call you. And that was the start of Voices of Emergence, because we both had that insight. Like, I know all these people, I met all these wonderful, amazing people that are actually standing in life, changing, things, changing systems, but starting from very small spaces. We have been used to technology, which is all about scale and going big and, massive and huge opportunities. And so what they are doing is totally the opposite. But I could see that that's actually the next step um, is the next step of what needs to emerge, because the old system, I realize, is really not longer hold can no longer hold everything.
It feels like now we could go into Voices of Emergence itself, or we can talk about Vipassana. I mean, I'm curious about both, of course. Regarding Vipassana, I'm wondering, how did this come into your life? How did you understand that this is something you wanted to do? And what happened after the silence? And you speak of equanimity. Equanimity. What does that mean to you? I'm curious.
Yeah. Sorry. There quite some people that I had met the last couple of years, people that I really also looked as like really inspirational people, who were really grounded, aligned. They were very, living their own life, the way they decided to live their life. And they all had, many of them had done Vipassana, and they always told me, like, Rudy, do Vipassana. Like, that's something for you. So I wanted to do that already for a couple of years, but it took a while until I got in, because there's a center here in Belgium, in the northeast of Belgium, and it's very much full. It's there's a lot of people, and I think they host 2,000 people or something a year on Vipassana, which is a lot. It's like they do 2 Vipassanas a month or something. And Vipassanas is 10 days. Yeah. So the first one is 10 days. Afterwards, you can do three-day ones or different ones. But the first one is definitely 10 days. And so I wanted to do that one. And I got a seat like recently, then the beginning of December. And yeah, for me, it was more like I wanted to gift myself that space with myself, that time with myself, because I have been years on the transformational journey, trying many different things. All the drills of listening to everyone, all the podcasts, do all the programs. Do all have done lots of shadow work myself. And the meditation, breathing, and then, I think for myself, it was more about to meet myself and my thoughts, because it's really about what is happening with the thoughts. And in Vipassana, we learn that, thoughts are just thoughts. It's like 100,000 thoughts a day that just come by and they don't mean anything. So for me, it was the first day was a shock on the physical body. You need to sit in lotus for 10, 11 hours. So, and I hadn't prepared. I could have prepared better, that's true, but I hadn't prepared. So that was like, I was just exhausted by the first day, like, and went to bed at 9 p.m. or something. And you wake up at 4 every day. So it's a very disciplined, structural program. And every day the same. And then the second day, your mind is literally going ballistic, because it loses all the first day, basically, you lose your sense of time, you lose your sense of orientation, because, like, the first day, I remember we come out of a course and you have some free time, you can sit in your room and you want to check what the teacher said, and you can't do it because you have no phone, no internet. Okay, you want to read something, you can't read. Then you want to listen to something, or you cannot play music or podcasts. You want to write it down, something what's in my head, you want to get it out of the head, you cannot do all that. So you're literally forced to sit with your own thoughts. And so your mind is literally then the second day asking all the attention, and you realize that your mind is the big junkie in the whole thing. You know, we talk about consumer addiction and all these things, but it's our brain that is constantly trained to so many inputs. And with a technology, the last 20, 30 years, it got an exponential acceleration. You know, so 25 years ago, I checked also, you know, there was no people that were overstimulated. There was no ADHD. That didn't exist, you know, because we were still like using technology, but moderately, you know, like now everybody's constantly like on fire with all the notifications, with everything that's going on, the news, the friends, all the videos that are passing by. So our mind is literally overstimulated. And so that's what you realize the second day, because it starts like hallucinating. You know, when we say ChatGTP is hallucinating, your own mind starts hallucinating without any drugs or whatever. It starts mixing old memories with new memories, with new scenarios. Literally, you see entire movies in front of you passing by, and psychedelics, you know, like whatever. And so to grab your attention, like, hey, I'm here. So it's also your ego is also there somewhere, you know, like stored, like, hey, I need attention. And so by the third day, you kind of like start to, okay, slow down a little. The mind start to slow down because it's also the structure, you know, like slowing down the food, you know, like the habits of the coffee, the sugar. Your body is also, you know, disconnecting from that. So, and by the fourth day, I think you learn the technique, which is basically it's a type of body scanning that you actually continuously scan your body and you name the sensations in your body. And so the word equanimity comes from that, like there can be a sensation which is with a lot of pain. There can be another one which, you know, gives you softness or a nice feeling. And so, and the exercise is actually to stay equanimous, you know, like don't think anything with it and just stay calm with it. And so then actually what happens the next days, you need to sit then the fifth day, 3 times a day, 1 hour without moving, which is also very challenging. And especially for me, it was challenging on my knees. And, but you learn to work with the sensations because then the sensations bring up memories from the past, you know, people, stories, and all that. And you learn that some stories is still with a lot of emotion that are coming up. You know, like when you sit still and you can't move. What happened with me was, and with everyone, it's a very different experience, right? So this is not like for everyone the same experience. But I had these flashes, you know, like of huge heat flashes, you know, like of when I started thinking about someone or then an unfinished story or someone that was, you know, related to something that was not a nice story or, and, um, and so you learn to stay equanimous. So actually, and with constant body scanning, what is happening is actually you disconnect the thought from the emotion. Because what happens is in our structure, body structure, is that when we have trauma or when we have triggers, they are always related to our past somehow, or to a story, or to a person, or something that we did not receive. And so, and it creates a tension inside. And so that tension then creates aversion also. So when in Vipassana, they explain that we either have craving, so we want something, and when we can't get it, there is aversion. That's why we create all these, you know, emotions and tensions in the body. So, and with equanimity, we actually learn to stay cool with it. And after a couple of days, you realize that you're actually recoding your whole mind and body. And so it's very deep, it's very intense, it's very challenging, but at the same time, it's also very rewarding. I had a very deep experience with pain and how to associate pain with stories from my past, my own pain, and that created a full release in my body, which was an amazing experience. And also, I understand pain from a different level now, not intellectually any longer, you know, not as a mental concept, but I literally felt it. I went through the pain and I realized that pain is universal, that felt pain. And so that then opens your heart to more compassion. So Vipassana is actually the way to, opening your heart in compassion. So I recommend it to everyone. It's not an easy exercise. It's really you meet yourself from the deepest level, but it's a cleansing exercise. And I think it's a very old technology that is more than 2,500 years old. That is like was taught by the Buddha. And I prefer this type of exercises and realizations also because it's about self-realization. And if you look at systems in the world and which are also connected to my own personal life, my first wife was Moroccan. She was Muslim. So I remember reading the Quran and all that, but then also understanding the religion is very different to the book. It's like Catholicism, like Jesus, the way it is described in his stories, what he's telling and what he's preaching is actually what a lot of the people are doing right now to become a good human being. It was all already there in those books, also in the Quran. But then there's different cultural differences, like why men should take care of more women because there were just more women at that time. And a lot of men died in wars and all that. So that was just like some things. And then what happened then is these religions, they basically put the God inside, they put it outside. And I think that's a huge mistake in humanity, and it's a huge mistake in our systems. That's like a deep systemic fall. And what we see and what is happening now in the world is that a lot of young people and this new generation realizes that it's about this connection with self. And like I was really surprised there was a lot of people in the 20s, 30s in the Vipassana, and they want to go deep because they realize that all these old systems don't make sense anymore. So, and I think for the world as we are in it now, I think the only way forward is that to have that self-realization, that self-autonomy, which is then also opening our heart, open our compassion to others to live more in community again, instead of a system that only pushes you to do things and extract things, to see us as an object. And then we are part of an economic system, we become part of that system. And so we can be squeezed as an orange, like in that system, which is happening already.
Yeah, thank you. That's so maybe this is a good point then to talk about Voices of Emergence, how it came into being, and what type of conversations did you feel are needed in the world?
Yeah. I,
Rudy, it froze. It froze for a
oh,
second. I don't know if it's my internet or if it froze.
oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Rudy.
Things unstable.
The internet froze there for about a minute or so. It's still glitchy. Hmm.
Is it better now?
Yeah, now it's better.
So you asked the question about Voices of Emergence. That
Yes.
question you have, right?
Yeah, I have it. So we'll cut that part out. Yeah.
Okay, when you push the record button, I'll go to that.
Yeah, it's still recording.
Okay, I can just go.
You can just go. Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
So, yeah, Voices of Emergence. I think the original idea was to start interviewing and creating conversations about all these new ideas. Yeah, and they are all people that are actually seeing that the current systems that we are in are no longer working, or not at the mid, long, or short, short and mid, long term. Why? Because there's a lot of, things that are embedded in the system that are actually, creating or contributing to climate breakdown, democratic erosion, technological acceleration, meaning loss, like all these things cannot be addressed not by technological solutions alone, So, and at the root lies a deeper issue. I think the fragmentation of how humans relate to themselves, to each other, to nature, and reality itself. So I think Voices of Emergence exist in response to a deep and multi-layered crisis, not only ecological, economic, or political, but existential and relational. Yeah. So, and we moved from interviews actually to community. We started a community on WhatsApp, which is very lively also. And they are all people who connect somehow to this idea of there needs to be something different. There needs to be There needs to be a voice. There needs to be inspiration. There needs to be new projects. There needs to be new type of learning happening. And so I think that is all contributing to, the fragmentation of humanity and life itself, I think, and to becoming more whole, and how can we cultivate, human capacity for a world in transition. So I think for us now, it's more about capacity building, like what is leadership today? Like leadership should start from within, from yourself and how you relate to the world. And I think the other important thing is that most of the people we interviewed are they are all very aware that we are in a living systems design. We are not in a structural design. The structural design is the economy, the technology. That's a very structural design, but that is no longer fitting for purpose. There's too many things out there that are not working any longer, and especially if we keep on going like that. And our planet is a living system. Our planet is a living system, and but many people seem to refuse that idea or that thought that we can control the planet, we can control humans and all that, which is, of course, is an incredible, stupid idea, I think. So when we look at nature, nature always comes back, always flourishes, like this, all these dystopian scenarios of like, that we are living now that we have known, I think you as well as a kid. It's going to be technological world, the planetary world. We're going to visit the planets and all that. And now some people are just doing that while they forget that the destruction of our planet is real. And we can solve this, but we are not doing it, like, and we keep repeating the same stories. We keep repeating the same problems. And I think I don't have the ambition to really change the world, but I think, we can do a lot by just changing our own world, and by creating our own world, the one we believe in that is not harmful for others, is not harmful for the planet. And so Voices of Emergence, I think, is emerging as a community and a learning community of people that will help each other, that will, instruct each other, that will guide each other, that will support each other, in this whole transition that we are in and that we don't really know where we're going to. And I think that's also the big difference with before everything was very linear. You could predict the future pretty easily, but since COVID, I think something really deep happened that people started to believe that that's a possibility, that there's a lot of other powers in hand. And that, of course, comes a lot of disinformation in the networks, and something really deep happened there for many people. But it's also a disconnection to our humanity. And I think the people that we interview, the people that are part of our community, the people that we reach out to, are the people that feel deeply connected to that humanity. Because that is what's going to, I think, that's the goal of the future. I mean, the goal of the future is not AI. AI is already talking to itself now in loops. So what's going to happen? AI is going to talk to itself, and then what's going to stand out is going to be real human connection, real human expression, real human creativity, intuition. Like. So and that's a bit my vision, and I think we find each other in that vision as well, right? So.
Yeah, have you seen Notebook LM, which is a little bit surreal, where you you put content into the AI and then it creates a podcast where the AI talks to itself, like a male and a female voice. It's but tell me, so our guests often tell us that they speak from a place they don't usually access, at least not on podcasts. What do you think makes that possible?
I think because we tap into a space, and I think we also create a certain safety, yeah, for people to actually become who they really are, or to access who they really are. And some of us, our speakers, have mentioned that they had actually in 1 hour the possibility to actually talk what they really feel, but that they can't express normally in their normal life, or not always. So, and I think that's really also the goal that we are looking for. I think we are the gold diggers of the future. We look for the deep humanity within. And so I just came up with this now. I never mentioned that to you either, So I don't know if it's something to, but I don't like extraction and all that, So that's maybe not the best expression, but I think, yeah, that's for us is like to create a safe space where people can really deeply connect to themselves. Like, what is really, is it your rational thing talking? Or is it your soul talking? Or is it really an aligned version of your grounded version where, your rational, your heart, your body is in full sync and connected with nature? Because that's where we become fully human again. That's where we also fully in sync with nature. And that's also where emergence can come, as I explained in the beginning of the podcast. Real emergence can only grow when we have that safety. But a lot of the people now are not safe. They are far from the inner coherence, and they operate out of fear, And then I think with us also what we are tapping into is like we're very present, we're very in the moment, and then when we are present, leadership emerges naturally. And it's also responsibility. It's not about control any longer, or I need to think what I'm going to say, this and that. No, the answers just flow, and the answers are there to support life, not to extract or to use people or to, produce or be efficient. Yeah, so it's really something deeply meaningful, I think, that we are able to bring up. Yeah, so and yeah, if I may add to that, I think it's also our quest for beauty. We are looking for the beauty within. We are looking for, to me, creation is about beauty. If you look at the great artworks of humanity, it's all about beauty. I mean, like there's so much beauty around us in nature, and also just creation or creativity is beautiful. That's where life emerges. When two cells come together, life emerges. When two people come together or multiple people, life emerges. It's to create. That's where beauty is also being born. And that's what I like. It's a natural space for me.
That's beautiful. Yeah. What has surprised you most since our podcast began, and when did you realize Voices of Emergence was more than a podcast?
I think I was doing quite some circles in another group and in other groups. And I was holding space in very polarized spaces. I remember some spaces that were about north south and all that, and very polarized and very different worldviews, of people and all that. And it became very difficult to hold that space. So and certain circles were very difficult because also I realized that people are so far from their own inner being, their own inner connection, that they are so manipulated by networks, by stories, by information that is not theirs. And sometimes much of it is fake, like and I don't really don't want to go there into what's fake and what's not fake, but just the deep loss of connection with self and with the love for life and the love for humanity is to me something very that was very per- poignant for me, like it shocked me quite a bit. Like, I mean, how are we going to solve this, like how are we going to live together if there's so much polarity, if there's so much division, and they're not like, if you sit in a circle, you can bring men from very opposite sides or polarized views in a circle. But when you let them talk about their opinion or the mind, they will start fighting immediately after 5 minutes. Because I think like that and you think like that. I'm left, you're right. I think, and then bad and good and all these polarized things. While if you connect to your humanity, you realize that we are all human. It doesn't matter where you are from. You connect to the deeper source of like who we are and where we are on this planet. We have been for millions of years. And so I think, what was the question again, Alex?
Uh, what's um, what has surprised you most about the podcast, and also when did you realize it was more than a podcast?
Right. Yeah. Oh, I'm still not there. Actually, I was trying to explain, no, how the community started. I think it was also right. So, and then I had a conversation with Amanda FT Migliu, who's also on our podcast, one of our first guests. And she told me, but why don't you create your own community? And why don't you create your own circles, and so that's how we started. Then we said like, okay, let's create a WhatsApp group with the people that we are interviewing with some personal contacts. Yeah, we have over 200 people now in the group, and most of them are invited by ourselves or by us too. And I think 20% or something comes through the web or through the podcast, which we allow because it's also creating a bit of diversity. But um, yeah, a lot of those people are also leaders in their own field, or they are leaders of their own communities. So they're all busy doing amazing projects. And so that creates a really high level field of, like frequency, I would say. Yeah. And I think what defines us as Voices of Emergence is that frequency, is that when we are on that frequency, which is, of course, is the frequency of love, is the frequency of self acceptance, is the frequency of openness, of inclusivity. Yeah. And when we are on that frequency together, then that's actually the guideline for the future, is to follow that frequency, because it's kind of a frequency of, I can't really explain, like sometimes people ask, but to me, it's like you tune into frequency, like you had with transistor radios, you had to tune, and then sometimes it was until you find the right channel. And I think with us, it's too like that. It's like when you shed all these layers of protection, and when you come fully to your own self, then you're also open to receive that frequency and to tune into that frequency. And I think the people that connect to Voices of Emergence as community also, or listening to the podcast, or people who feel that frequency. And I think those people, and that is also for me a strong signal to move forward. That is actually the signal to move forward. It's a frequency that we tap into. So is Voices of Emergence a podcast? Yes. Is it a community? Yes. Is it a platform? No. Perhaps yes, or perhaps in the making, perhaps a learning platform, as we're going to start doing learning programs. But it's, I think, more than anything, it's a frequency we tune into. And that is also the difficulty to explain that, because it's only when you feel that frequency, when you come and sit with us in circles, when we hold these circles or when we hold certain activities, we can feel that frequency.
We often talk about the field. And so, what have you learned about leadership, stewardship, and the difference between driving a project and holding a field?
Oh, let's say, I think driving a project is top down. You have something in your mind and you want that to happen. And you can design a project, you can design a workshop, you can design whatever. So people will behave in that sense to get that result. Right? So that's design, basically, right? And we have been living in that for years. It's like meetings, you have to sit in a meeting for 1 hour to decide things, and then everybody's like totally not there, and they're thinking about other things, and it's very structured, or that can be done by AI or robots, like all these things, like to orchestrate and manage and all these things. So I think the field, or connecting to the field, is also to distance ourselves from that system, from that rigid technological core extractive system. So, which has created a lot of wealth also. Yeah. So I don't say that it's all bad, but I think we need to go to a type of balance, and we need to come to a certain type of balance, especially on a planetary level. Yeah. We are now too much thinking, and this is me, this is my region, this is my land, this is mine. While if we think planetary, then then we will start solving the problems, like they were doing in climate for a while, but then now that's far away from any political agendas, also due to geopolitics. But I think there was, what's her name again? There's this, mm, I think it's Esther Duflo. Yeah, she won the Nobel Prize of Economics in 2019, and she actually she had that vision also to solve poverty in the world, and she found out by using a method that is used in the medical science, of randomized, I think it's called randomized control trials. Yeah, that people that we are conditioned with certain thinking about poverty, and people that are poor, they don't work enough or they don't want to work or, all these things. They are just conceptual failures, So, and she proved that with a lot of testings all over the world, like thousands and thousands of tests, that actually it's the opposite. If you give them security, if you give them space to grow and all that, they grow, and they create a surplus to the economy. And she also had another thought, which is about taxing, I think, the 3,000 billionaires in the world, or with 2% only. And that could eradicate poverty and help, get to a bigger planetary awareness, because we also have this thought that, if we tax the rich, they're going to run away to another country. But if all the countries agree on such a tax, they cannot run away any longer. So I think, yeah, we're going to evolve towards such things in the future. But I also think that I moved away from the original question. I don't know how I got here.
Yeah, no, I mean it's I think you spoke about it with the frequency and the resonance and the field and how running a project is different than tuning into a field and stewarding a field. Um, and
Yeah,
like how systems break down. And we see, like, with sustainability, it became a label and then it was just greenwashing. The term regeneration itself is becoming a label, and it's also, there's some greenwashing there. But I think we're pointing at something more fundamental that happens in nature, and it is a field, it is a frequency, and it's not a top-down project. Like, nature is not a project, but nature is abundant. And so, what did we miss as society, as humanity, that we created these things that created progress, but it created a lot of inequality, a lot of scarcity, a lot of problems. And but nature keeps going on. There's no project behind nature, but it's very abundant. Yeah.
yeah. I think you mentioned that in a podcast or something that I think it's in with the Aboriginals that their language changed with the environment. When the environment changes, the language changes. So, which is if we look at the story of humanity over the years, like and thousands of years, then this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's a beautiful idea. I mean, um, yes, language is very location specific, and so the Eskimos have words for snow that we don't. There's different types of snow, and for them it's important. But for someone who doesn't live in those conditions, you don't have to have that vocabulary. So language is very location specific, but also, from what I understand, as the Aborigines walk through their locality, they tell the stories of that region, and the stories are anchored to the landmarks. So if you drive them too quickly through it, they get lost. They can no longer tell the story because the landmarks are going too quickly. And I felt that was very beautiful. Something that, as Westerners living in cities, we don't really experience.
Yeah, and I think for us, it's also there's a couple of influences, like that physicist, also the Belgian physicist, actually is from Russian origin, Ilya Prigogine, yeah, who talked about basically that complex systems is far from equilibrium. So that small islands of coherence in a sea of chaos can catalyze the emergence of a higher order. And so I think we capture actually a lot of these islands, a lot of these communities that are a bit everywhere, and that we all do our work on our side, but that that all these islands of coherence over time can create a lot of change in the future. And I really believe that, like that this pocket of coherence in people, in groups, in communities can actually repattern the larger system over time. Yeah, because this is it's going to happen, at some point, because the current systems are breaking down. And whether we like it or not, I think we sense it because most of the people that are in our community are highly sensitive also. We sense the future, we sense what's coming. And so I think also that's important for people to tune in, especially also business wise, that they can tune into this intelligence. It's like, when you go to indigenous tribes, they always had their own, how you call it, the person who went first to sniff when there was danger or to sense when there was danger. So, and I think we have a collective, a group of people who are also highly sensitive. And so for business, it can be an opportunity to really sense into what is happening in our community, what is living there, what are the new patterns, what are the new things emerging from our community, and that goes in many different areas to look at, finance models in a different way, in a regenerative way, how we look at organizations, from a quantum perspective. There's many different things that we can talk about and also look in.
Yeah, Einstein said you can't solve a problem with the same consciousness that created the problem. And so you need new ways of thinking. And for me, what we have here, the guests and in the community itself, are people that bring a diversity of thinking, creative ways, highly sensitive ways, sensing into something new, kind of a new dimensionality of thinking that takes us away from extractive systems into more life affirming ways of being. And I think that, the podcast and the community is a way for people to find the others, find the like-minded others, and to create something new. In the beginning, in the introduction, it we mentioned that you are an elder in training, which is hard to believe because you look youthful. So what does that mean to you?
Well, it was actually in Belgium after my heart surgery that they told me you can go on pension, like in 1 or 2 years. And I'm like, I had never thought about that. So, and I don't, it's not like I want to stop doing what I'm doing, So, but I think there is the societal image, what does that mean? Like at 65, 67. In Belgium, it's 67. Now, in many countries, it's already above 66, 67 or higher. And I predict it's going to go higher in the future because we live longer also, and there's more cost on care and all that. So, but yeah, you can either feel bad about that, you're growing old, or, when I meet people in my village from my older class and all that, they're like, oh, when it's your time to go on pension and all that. So, and I'm like, oh, is this the only thing to think about, like, so I feel still very active, and luckily, thanks to my heart surgery, also that and I feel grateful that I can do this work, like because I connect to many people who are 20, 30 years younger than me, who are really the living field of what is bubbling in life and what makes life bubbly. And I'm very grateful to that, and I feel myself also, I think it's very precious to be able to do this work. And I want to keep on doing that because I think when we lose meaning or when we lose doing what we really love doing, then we become really old. But it was also in a circle at a bit the same time or a bit before that some younger man, they told me, yeah, but Rudy, you are the elder now. And I remember the first time I heard that word, it really came in like, whoa, what the fuck? Like I am now an elder and they see me as such, and I was not ready for that. I had never thought about it. What does that mean to be an elder? So actually your whole thinking shifts. And I have been then here in circles also with elders that are thinking about designing a rites of passage here for the people in Belgium, or the teenagers, like what would the elders want to give or tell these youngsters what we did not receive in our period when we were 14 years old or something. And that was beautiful also what came out of that. So I also learned that it's about learning it's about appreciation for my own cycles, for my own being, and also the cycle of life. That you cannot just keep on linearly do what you used to do. Yeah, your body is also asking different things from you. I'm very active. I love doing things. I think I'm very passionate in what I'm doing, but my body wants rest. So I also learn to listen to my body, and when my body wants to go out in nature, I go out in nature. So I really am very much more connected to my bodily senses as well. And so, but it's yeah, it's an elder in becoming, I call it, because it's a training, like, and I don't sit with a lot of older elders, so that's, I think something is shift. I think for a man, this is a crucial point because there's always an elder we can look up to. There's always someone we can count on, or it can be an elder brother, it can be a father, it can be someone, a mentor that you can count on for, yeah, to learn also, and to take your things out of your system that you need to take out. But then at some point, there's no one left. You basically need to carry now all that, and you need to carry it for the others. And so this is also, I think, the role of the elder is to really learn how to serve to humanity. This is not about me any longer, and me making money or me doing this or that. It's like, how can I serve? How can I hold capacity? How can I learn with others of how we can hold capacity together in this world of transition and what's happening around us? I mean, it's crazy out there. So, and what can we do together, to hold that, but also to enjoy life, to enjoy the beauty of life, and to always strive for beauty. And like, look for beauty in the small moments of life, in the small stories. And yeah, it's a learning journey.
If there was one seed you could plant in the hearts of people or the hearts of leaders, what would it be?
um, I think one word that has stayed with me now for a couple of years, and I think it came out of my ceremonial work I did with Indigenous, and is the word grace. Grace as the seed of what moved through me, and through the thresholds in my own life, from futurism to presence, from technology into soul work, from man's work into community weaving, from my own heart surgery that brought me face to face with fragility. Grace is the thread that allows those transitions to happen without hardening, without bitterness, but with openness. Grace is perhaps understood or misunderstood as softness or passivity, but for me, it is something very different. It's about elegance. It's about to have that elegance or that insight, that capacity to always choose love over fear, the capacity to stand in truth, to face hardship, but still to be able to respond with love. And in my own experience, there was many moments where striving, control, or even courage were not enough. It was never enough. So what carried me through was always grace, that quest for beauty also, or that ability to surrender, to life, to allow life to unfold, even when it didn't follow my plans. So grace is what let me see my heart surgery, not as an ending, but as a beginning. It's what allows me in man's circles to sit with another man's pain without needing to fix it, but to simply hold space for him so he can find his own truth. And I think for leadership, grace means recognizing that we are not in control of the whole story. We can act with integrity, we can stand in vision, but ultimately, leadership is about listening to life, to emergence, and allowing it to guide us. Grace also gives us the humility to let go, the courage to act from love, and the trust that something larger is at work through us. So, if we could design a world including the grace for Mother Earth, motherhood, and humanity in general, I think we can design an entire different world that can be beautiful, abundant, and more just.
Those are beautiful words and sentiments to wrap up with. Is there anything else you would like to say or something I didn't ask? Um, any other thoughts?
Yes, that I'm so grateful, Alex, that you're in my life, and that we are able to carry this journey forward together. I think also why we reconnected is also because we are at a certain moment in our life where, all the boxes tick into a certain direction that I think we both decided that the old ways of doing is no longer working for us. And that we decided that, even if we don't know what's coming, but we are ready to jump and hold each other, and stand in our strength and courage and create also space for others to join us on this journey, and I'm truly grateful for that also. And I feel blessed, for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Rudy. I feel equally blessed and honored. Um, we've known each other for a long time, and this was the right time to create this. And I think it's very much needed for the world, and it's very inspiring for me as well. So thank you.
Yeah, I think the best is yet to come. There's amazing things are still to happen in our lifetime. Sing no more,